If I could just go back to the question of nuclear exchange. So there is no mechanism by which the leaders of Russia and the United States can speak to each other to avoid the kind of misunderstanding that could kill hundreds of millions of people.
No. We have this channel, which is automatically engaged when ballistic missile launch is taking place. As regards this Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missile, mid-range ballistic missile, 30 minutes in advance, this system sent the message to the United States, and they knew that this was the case, and that they don't mistake it for anything bigger and real dangerous.
Well, I think the system sounds very dangerous.
Well, it was a test launch, you know.
Yes. Oh, you're speaking of the test. Okay. But I just wonder how worried you are that, considering there doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation between the two countries, both sides are speaking about exterminating the other's populations, that this could somehow get out of control in a very short period and no one could stop it. It seems incredibly
No, we're not talking about exterminating anybody's population. We did not start this war. We have been, for years and years and years, sending warnings that pushing NATO closer and closer to our borders is going to create a problem.
Yes.
2007, Putin started to explain, you know, to the people who seem to be overtaken by the end of history and being dominant, no challenge, and so on and so forth. And of course, when the coup took place, the Americans did not hide that they were behind it. There is a conversation between Victoria Nuland and the then American ambassador in Kiev when they discuss personalities to be included in the new government after the coup. The figure of $5 billion spent on Ukraine after independence was mentioned as the guarantee that everything would be like the Americans want. So we don't have any intention to exterminate Ukrainian people. They are brothers and sisters to the Russian people.
How many have died so far, do you think, on both sides?
It is not disclosed by Ukrainians. Zelensky was saying that it is much less than 80,000 persons on Ukrainian side. But there is one very reliable figure in Palestine. During 1 year after the Israelis started their operation in response to this terrorist attack, which we condemned, and this operation, of course, acquired the proportion of collective punishment, which is against international humanitarian law as well. So during 1 year after the operation started in Palestine, the number of civilians, Palestinian civilians, killed is estimated 45,000. This is almost twice as many as the number of civilians on both sides of Ukrainian conflict who died during 10 years after the coup. 1 year and 10 years. So it is a tragedy in Ukraine. It's disaster in Palestine, but we never ever had as our goal killing people, and Ukrainian regime did. The head of the office of Zelensky once said that we will make sure that cities like Kharkov, Nikolaev will forget what Russian means at all. Another guy in his office stated that Ukrainians must exterminate Russians through law, or if necessary, physically. Ukrainian former ambassador to Kazakhstan, forgot his name, became famous when giving an interview and looking into the camera, being recorded and broadcast. He said, our main task is to kill as many Russians as we can, so that our kids have less things to do. And the statements like this are all over the vocabulary of the regime.
How many Russians in Russia have been killed since February of 2022?
It's not for me to disclose this information. In the time of military operations, special rules exist, and our Ministry of Defense follows these rules. But the very interesting fact that when Zelensky was playing not in international arena, but at his comedy club or whatever it is called, he was. There are videos from that period when he was bluntly defending the Russian language. He was saying, what is wrong with Russian language? I speak Russian. Russians are our neighbors. Russian is one of our languages. And get lost, he said, to those who wanted to, to attack the Russian language and Russian culture. When he became president, he changed very fast. And before the military operations, in September 2021, he was interviewed. And at that time, he was conducting war against Donbass in violation of the Minsk agreements. And the interviewer asked him what he thought about the people on the other side of the line of contact. And he answered very thoughtfully. There are people and there are species. And if you, living in Ukraine, feel associated with the Russian culture, my advice to you, for the sake of your kids, for the sake of your grandkids, get out to Russia. And if this guy wants to bring Russians and people of Russian culture back under his territorial integrity, I mean, it shows that he is not adequate.
So what are the terms under which Russia would cease hostilities? Like what are you asking for?
10 years ago, in February 2014, we were asking only for the deal between the president and the opposition.
Yes.
To have government of national unity, to hold early elections, to be implemented. The deal was signed. And we were asking for the implementation of this deal. They were absolutely impatient and aggressive. And they were, of course, pushed, I have no slightest doubt, by the Americans, because if Victoria Nuland and the US ambassador agreed the composition of the government, why wait for 5 months to hold early elections? The next time we were in favor of something was when the Minsk agreements were signed.
Yes.
I was there. The negotiations lasted for 17 hours. And the deal was, Crimea was lost by that time because of referendum, and nobody, including my colleague John Kerry, meeting with us, nobody in the West was raising the issue of Crimea. Everybody was concentrated on Donbass. And the Minsk agreements provided for territorial integrity of Ukraine, minus Crimea, this was not even raised, and a special status for a very tiny part of Donbass, not for the entire Donbass, not for Novorossiya at all. Part of Donbass, under these Minsk agreements, endorsed by the Security Council, should have the right to speak Russian language, to teach Russian language, to study in Russian, to have local law enforcement, like in the states of US, to be consulted when judges and prosecutors are appointed by the central authority, and to have some facilitated economic connections with neighboring regions of Russia. That's it. Something which President Macron promised to give to Corsica, and still is considering how to do this. And when these agreements were sabotaged all along, first by Poroshenko and then by Zelensky, both of them, by the way, came to presidency running on the promise of peace, and both of them lied. So when these Minsk agreements were sabotaged to the extent that we saw the attempts to take this tiny part of Donbass by force, and we, as Putin explained, we have, at that time, we suggested these security arrangements to NATO and the United States, which was rejected. And when the Plan B was launched by Ukraine and its sponsors, trying to take this part of Donbass by force, it was then that we launched the special military operation. Had they implemented the Minsk agreements, Ukraine would be one piece minus Crimea. But even then, when Ukrainians, after we started the operation, suggested to negotiate, we agreed. There were several rounds in Belarus, and one later they moved to Istanbul. And in Istanbul, Ukrainian delegation put a paper on the table saying those are the principles on which we are ready to agree. And we accepted those principles.
The Minsk principles.
No, the Istanbul principles.
Yes.
That was April 22.
Right.
Which was no NATO, but security guarantees to Ukraine collectively provided with the participation of Russia. And these security guarantees would not cover Crimea or the east of Ukraine. It was their proposal. And it was initialed. And the head of the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul, who is now the chair of the Zelensky faction in the parliament, he recently, a few months ago, in an interview, he confirmed that this was the case. And on the basis of these principles, we were ready to draft a treaty. But then this gentleman who headed the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul, he said that Boris Johnson visited and told them to continue to fight. Then there was...
But Boris Johnson, on behalf of...
He said no, but, you know, the guy who initialed the paper, he said it was Boris Johnson. Other people say it was Putin who ruined the deal because of the massacre in Bucha. But massacre in Bucha is something which they never mentioned anymore. Massacre in Bucha. I do, and we do. In a sense, they are on the defensive. Several times in the United Nations Security Council, sitting at the table with Antonio Guterres, 2 years ago and last year, last year and this year, the General Assembly, I raised the issue of Bucha and said, guys, it is strange that you are silent about Bucha because you were very vocal when BBC team found itself on a street where the bodies were located. And can we, I inquired, can we get the names of the persons whose bodies were broadcast by BBC? Total silence. I addressed Antonio Guterres personally in the presence of the Security Council members. He did not respond. Then at my press conference in New York, after the end of the General Assembly last September, I asked all the correspondents, guys, you are journalists. Maybe you're not an investigative journalist, but journalists normally are interested to get the truth. And Bucha thing, which was played all over the media outlets condemning Russia, is not of any interest to anyone. Politicians, UN officials, and now even journalists. I asked them, when I talked to them in September, please, as professional people, try to get the names of those whose bodies were shown in Bucha. No answer. Just like we don't have any answer to the question, where is the results of medical analysis of Alexei Navalny, who died recently, but who was treated in Germany in the fall of 2020, when he felt bad on a plane over Russia. The plane landed. He was treated by the Russian doctors in Siberia. Then the Germans wanted to take him. We immediately allowed the plane to come. They took him. In less than 24 hours, he was in Germany. And then the Germans continued to say that we poisoned him. And we asked them, can you, and they announced that the analysis confirmed that he was poisoned. We asked for the test results to be given to us. They said, no, we give it to Organization on Chemical Weapons. We went to this organization, we are members, and we said, can you show to us, because this is our citizen, we are accused of having poisoned him. They said, the Germans told us not to give it to you because they found nothing in the civilian hospital, and the announcement that he was poisoned was made after he was treated in a military hospital, Bundeswehr hospital. So it seems that this secret is not going.
So how did Navalny die?
Well, he died serving the term in Russia, but he during, as far as it was reported, every now and then he felt not well, which was another reason why we continued to ask the Germans, can you show us the results which you found? Because we did not find what they found. And what they did to him, I don't know.
What the Germans did to him?
Yeah, because they don't explain to anybody, including us. Or maybe they explain to the Americans. Maybe this is credible, but they never told us how they treated him, what they found, and what methods they were using.
How do you think he died?
I'm not a doctor, but for anybody to guess, even for the doctors to try to guess, they need to have information. And if the person was taken to Germany to be treated after he had been poisoned, the results of the tests cannot be secret. We still cannot get anything credible on the fate of Sergei Skripal and his daughter. The information is not provided to us. He is our citizen, she is our citizen, and we have all the rights and the conventions which the UK is party to get information.
Why do you think, so many threads, but why do you think that Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the UK, would have stopped the peace process in Istanbul? On whose behalf was he doing that?
Well, I met with him a couple of times, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was motivated by some immediate desire or by some long-term strategy. He is not very predictable.
Okay. Do you think he was acting on behalf of the U.S. government, on behalf of the Biden administration? He was doing this independently? I mean, I
don't know. I don't know, and I wouldn't guess the fact that the Americans and the Brits are leading in this quote-unquote situation is obvious. Now it is becoming also clear that there is a fatigue in some capitals, and there are talks every now and then that the Americans would like to leave it with the Europeans and to concentrate on something more important. I wouldn't guess. We would be judging by specific steps. It's obvious, though, that Biden administration would like to leave legacy to the Trump administration as bad as they can.
Yes.
And similar to what Obama did to Trump during his first term, when late December 2016, Obama expelled Russian diplomats just very late December, 120 persons with family members, did it on purpose, demanded them on leave on the day when there was no direct flight from Washington, so they had to move to New York by buses with all their luggage, with children, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, Obama announced the arrest of pieces of diplomatic property of Russia. And we still never were able to come and see what is the state of this Russian property. They never allowed us to come and see, though, under all convention. They just say that these pieces we don't consider as being covered by diplomatic immunity, which is a unilateral decision, never substantiated by any international court.
So you believe the Biden administration is doing something similar again to the incoming Trump administration?
Yeah, because that episode with the expulsion and the seizure of property certainly did not create the promising ground for beginning of our relations with the Trump administration. So I think they're doing the same.
But this time, President Trump was elected on the explicit promise to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. So, I mean, he said that in appearance after appearance. So given that, there is hope for a resolution, it sounds like. What are the terms to which you'd agree?
Well, the terms, I basically alluded to them when President Putin spoke in this ministry on the 14th of June. He once again reiterated that we were ready to negotiate on the basis of the principles which were agreed in Istanbul and rejected by Boris Johnson, according to the statement of the head of the Ukrainian delegation. The key principle is no non-bloc status of Ukraine, and we would be ready to be part of the group of countries who would provide collective security guarantees to
no
Ukraine.
NATO.
No NATO, absolutely. No military bases. No military exercises on the Ukrainian soil with participation of foreign troops. And this is something which he reiterated. But of course, he said it was April 2022. Now some time has passed. And the realities on the ground would have to be taken into account and accepted. The realities on the ground are not only the line of contact, but also the changes in the Russian constitution after referendum was held in Donetsk, Lugansk republics and Kherson and Zaporozhye regions.
Yes.
And they are now part of the Russian Federation according to the constitution, and this is a reality. And of course, we cannot tolerate a deal which would keep the legislation, which I quoted, prohibiting Russian language, Russian media, Russian culture, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because it is a violation of the obligations of Ukraine under the UN Charter, And somebody must be done about it. And the fact that the West, since this Russophobic legislative offensive started in 2017, since the West was totally silent, and it is silent until now, of course, we would have to pay attention to this in a very special way.
Would dropping sanctions against Russia be a condition?
I would say probably many people in Russia would like to make it a condition, but the more we live under sanctions, the more we understand that it is better to rely on yourself and to develop mechanisms, to develop platforms for cooperation with normal countries who are not unfriendly to you, and don't mix economic interest and policies, and especially politics. And we learned a lot after the sanctions started. Sanctions started under Obama. They continued in a very big way under first term of Trump. And these sanctions under the Biden administration are absolutely unprecedented. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, you know. And
well, but it also just drives...
They would be never kill us, so they are making us stronger.
And driving Russia east. And so the vision that I think sane policymakers in Washington had 20 years ago is, why not bring Russia into a Western bloc, sort of as a balance against the rising East? But it doesn't seem like that. Do you think that's still possible?
I don't think so. Recently, Putin was speaking at Valdai Club. Politologists and experts. He said we would never be back at the situation of early 2022. That's when he realized for himself, apparently, not only he, but he spoke publicly about this, that all attempts to be on equal terms with the West have failed.